So what if a marriage proposal isn't, a romantic event at all?
Right.
What if it's actually just this really rigid, like, administrative procedure?
Like filling out paperwork.
Exactly. And what if refusing it isn't just this tragic heartbreak, but a radical act of political resistance?
It's a wild thought.
It is. Welcome to this deep dive. You're so glad you were here with us because today we are unpacking an incredibly unique and frankly mind-bending stack of source material.
Oh, absolutely.
You are looking at a book titled Champagne Problems, Arendt Meets Taylor Swift.
Which is just a title that practically demands you stop walking and, do a double take.
Right.
I mean, maybe laugh out loud.
Yeah.
It is deliberately engineered to just short-circuit your expectations before you even open the cover.
It really is. And the author behind this whole provocation is just as fascinating and just as elusive as the title suggests.
Very elusive.
Yeah, they write under a pseudonym. It's Hushun, which translates from Taiwanese Mandarin to mouse-colored cat.
It is a brilliant contradiction right out of the gate, isn't it?
Totally.
Like a cat that takes on the color of its prey. It tells you immediately that this author enjoys playing with categories.
Yeah, like they are a predator disguised as the target, just hiding in plain sight.
Exactly. And the biographical details we have on this mouse-colored cat are delightfully murky.
Oh, super murky. Almost like a puzzle they purposely left for the reader.
Right. Some sources in the text say he is a former programmer who turned into a lawyer.
Which is quite the pivot.
Yeah. And others insist he's a philosopher who just prefers to think in silence, somewhere between Brussels, Antwerp, and Krakow.
And I love that the text itself winks at the reader and calls that specific rumor a geographical misunderstanding.
It's so playful. But what we do know for sure, according to the preface, is his absolute uncompromising stance on human thought.
Yes.
He maintains that artificial intelligence can organize thought, and it can do so flawlessly. But only humans can misbehave creatively.
I love that phrasing. Misbehave creatively.
Right. Oh, and he specifically notes that he dislikes lukewarm water, predictable arguments, and cats without ambition.
Cats without ambition. That just sets the perfect tone for this whole thing.
It really does.
So here is our mission for this deep dive with you today. We're going to explore a theoretical experiment that pairs the biggest, most culturally ubiquitous pop star in the world with one of the most rigorous, formidable, and honestly controversial political philosophers of the 20th century.
Hannah Arendt.
Exactly. We are here to dismantle the artificial wall society builds between pop culture and high philosophy.
You're tearing them down.
Yeah.
Okay.
We are going to discover why a 3.5-minute pop song might actually hold the key to understanding the very mechanics of human freedom.
It sounds crazy, but it makes so much sense once you get into it.
It does. Okay, so let's unpack this. Because to even begin to approach that explosive premise, we first have to address the elephant in the room.
The smirk.
Yes. We have to talk about the smirk.
The author brings this up right on page 1. They fully acknowledge that for serious, academically minded people, pairing Taylor Swift with Hannah Arendt is, well, it's already one pairing too many.
Right. It feels offensive to their sensibilities.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The book states, and I quote, "Some will find this ridiculous. That is expected. It is, in fact, the point."
I mean, because the real question the author wants us to ask isn't whether Taylor Swift is secretly sitting around reading political philosophy.
No, not at all.
The real question is why that idea makes us smirk in the first place. Why does it feel so inherently absurd to put them in the same room?
And to answer that, the text brings in the French sociologist Pierre Bourdieu,
Yes.
specifically his landmark 1979 work, Distinction.
This is such a crucial piece of the puzzle for you to understand because it really sets the foundation for the whole experiment.
It does. Pierre Bourdieu spent his career analyzing how society stratifies itself.
Right, how we sort ourselves into groups.
Exactly. And he argued decades ago that the division we make between high culture, like opera, fine art, dense German philosophy, and low culture, like pop music, reality television, or what we dismiss as mere entertainment, is actually not a matter of intellectual depth at all.
Wait, really? Because society definitely tells us that reading Dostoevsky makes you smarter than listening to a top 40 radio station.
Society tells you that, yes. But Bourdieu says that division is an illusion.
Wow.
It is purely a mechanism of social sorting. High culture isn't automatically profound, and low culture isn't automatically shallow.
Okay.
It is entirely about how the culture is packaged, distributed, and crucially, who gets to claim ownership of it.
So the text says one circulates with credentials and the other circulates with playlists.
Exactly.
High culture is like a country club. It only holds value because of who it keeps out.
Yes, the exclusivity is the point.
Right. You have to have the right education, the right vocabulary, the right background to get it.
And meanwhile, pop culture is like public transportation.
Yeah. It gets everyone exactly where they need to go, but you can't use it to prove you're richer or smarter than the person sitting next to you on the bus.
That is a fantastic analogy.
Mm.
High culture requires a bouncer at the door checking IDs.
And pop culture just lets everyone in.
Right. And what's fascinating here is why pop culture is viewed with such intense suspicion by the gatekeepers of that country club.
It's so weird when you think about it.
The text explains that pop culture is suspect, not because it lacks emotional or intellectual complexity, but because it spreads too widely to function as a status signal.
Wow, let that sink in for a second. It's rejected because it's accessible.
Exactly.
Right.
If everyone understands it, if
Yeah.
everyone from a teenager in Tokyo to a grandmother in Texas has access to it and can feel it deeply,
Then it's not special anymore.
right, it cannot elevate anyone above anyone else. It completely loses its power as a tool for social distinction.
So the elite cannot use it to prove they are elite.
Exactly. So by putting Taylor Swift and Hannah Arendt at the exact same table, the author is deliberately vandalizing that social sorting mechanism.
They're taking a sledgehammer to the country club gates.
Yes. They're saying no one here is going to explain Taylor Swift, and no one here is going to translate the philosopher.
We are simply going to seat them at the same table, serve the dinner, and wait to see who spills their wine first.
I love that. And this brings us to an incredible and honestly quite moving piece of writing early in the book.
Oh, the apocryphal foreword.
Yes, the author creates an imagined piece of writing, clearly labeled as fictional, written from Taylor Swift's perspective at 2 in the morning.
And the text makes sure to emphasize this is a literary attempt to create a dialogue, right? It's not a real diary entry.
Right, it's a creative device.
But the emotional points made in this imagined foreword are incredibly sharp. Taylor writes about spending half her life trying to capture lightning in a bottle.
Which she does so well.
She describes sitting on the floor in pajamas, scribbling in notebooks, trying to understand why time passes so differently when you are falling in love.
And why it seems to stop completely, just suffocatingly dead when your heart is broken.
Yeah. And then she talks about the societal pushback she received. She notes how for years she was told her feelings were too much.
Always too much.
They were too loud, they were too frequent, they were too dramatic, and implicitly they were too feminine.
Right. The critics dismissed her, saying she just wrote silly breakup songs for teenage girls.
Which is such a massive cultural blind spot.
It really is.
As if adolescence isn't the exact time when you feel the world with the violence of a summer storm.
Yeah, right.
When every single emotion is life or death. Why do we trivialize that?
We trivialize it because of Bourdieu's sorting mechanism. But the core argument of this apocryphal foreword is that behind the glitter, behind the stadium tours and the carefully curated eras,
People are asking the exact same terrifying existential questions that keep philosophers awake in their ivory towers.
yes. In the foreword, she asks, why does the memory of a red scarf left in a drawer weigh more heavily than an entire decade?
Which is such a striking, heavy image, a tiny piece of fabric holding the gravitational pull of a collapsed star.
Is beautiful.
And she wonders if discovering that her sleepless nights might actually resemble Søren Kierkegaard's theories of existential dread.
Or Friedrich Nietzsche's anxieties about the abyss.
Yeah, that it's both strange and strangely comforting.
For those who might need a quick refresher, Kierkegaard was a 19th century Danish philosopher obsessed with the anxiety of human choice.
Right, what he called fear and trembling.
Yes. The terrifying freedom of realizing you have to make a choice, and that choice will define you.
And Nietzsche wrote extensively about how we construct meaning in a universe that doesn't inherently care about us.
So the fictional Taylor is realizing that maybe, without knowing it, she wasn't just writing about a boy with blue eyes who broke her heart.
Maybe she was engaging in a debate with Plato about the nature of illusion versus reality.
Or arguing with Jean-Paul Sartre about how the gaze of other people completely alters our own identity.
It democratizes philosophy entirely. The foreword tells the reader directly not to let anyone tell them their intensity is a weakness.
It suggests that their tears are ink, And their daily doubts are, in fact, philosophy in action.
The ability to feel everything right away and almost too well might not be a flaw to be medicated or outgrown. It might be their greatest power.
And I absolutely love how it ends with this brilliant little Easter egg. The fictional Taylor writes, apparently Kant loved the bridge in Cruel Summer.
Which is hilarious if you know Kant.
Immanuel Kant was an 18th century philosopher famous for his categorical imperative.
Right.
The idea that you must act according to rules that should be universal laws, completely devoid of messy human emotion. He was rigid, absolute, and highly structured.
And the bridge in the song Cruel Summer is the exact opposite of that.
Pure chaos.
It is pure, chaotic, screaming, rule-breaking emotion. It's the moment the structure of the song practically explodes.
Saying Kant would love it is the ultimate philosophical inside joke.
It is. It proves that simplifying philosophy isn't a betrayal of the source material.
The text explicitly says, to simplify is to flatten, to translate is to risk. And risk, unlike prestige, is democratic.
Exactly. So if we're going to accept the premise that a pop song can carry the immense weight of political philosophy, we really need to meet the philosopher on the other side of this specific track.
We do. We need to understand who she was and what she saw.
Let's look at the life of the woman who theorized the absolute existential danger of doing what is expected of you.
Hannah Arendt. The text provides a brief but incredibly potent biography.
She was born in 1906 in Hanover, Germany, to a highly cultured, secular Jewish family.
And right away, the text plunges us into one of the most complex, uncomfortable, and murky aspects of her early life.
Yeah. At age 18, she went to the University of Marburg and entered the seminar of a rising philosophical star named Martin Heidegger.
And as the text bluntly puts it, she also entered his bed.
Yeah. He was 35 years old, he was married, and he was her teacher.
The author notes, very wryly, that the Taylor Swift song, Dear John,
Which is famously about a toxic, unbalanced relationship with an older man.
exactly. The author says it was decades ahead of its time.
The power dynamics are just glaring, and the text is very clear that this story is murky and will always remain so.
Arendt never denied the affair, and she never publicly excused it.
But the important thing is that she eventually left Marburg. She left him.
Right. She went on to study with Karl Jaspers and painstakingly developed a philosophical framework that owed absolutely nothing to anyone else.
And especially not to Heidegger. Because, as the text chillingly reminds us, Heidegger, the brilliant man who wrote about the nature of existence and being,
He would eventually wear the Nazi swastika on his lapel and become a member of the party.
it is one of the great betrayals in intellectual history.
In 1933, as the Nazi Party rose to absolute power and the situation became untenable, Arendt was forced to flee Germany.
She spent years stateless, moving through Europe until 1941, when she finally arrived in New York with a makeshift visa and a language she did not yet master.
Yet, she would go on to write some of her most important work in English, a style the text describes as incredibly sharp and unadorned.
She cut through the thick, impenetrable academic jargon that usually cloaks meaning, and she wrote with a clarity that was almost surgical.
And that surgical clarity leads us to her monumental works. In 1951, she published The Origins of Totalitarianism, trying to understand how the nightmares of the 20th century came to be.
But the real turning point for our deep dive today comes in 1961.
Yes, when she was sent by the New Yorker magazine to cover the trial of Adolf Eichmann in Jerusalem.
Now, this is a critical juncture in our conversation, and it's vital to note here that we are looking purely through the lens the author provides for this experiment.
Yes, absolutely.
Arendt's framing of Eichmann was deeply controversial when she wrote it, and it remains heavily debated by historians today. Just to be super clear with you listening, our goal today isn't to validate her political theory or to endorse her specific historical conclusions about the Holocaust.
Right. We are strictly here to understand how this author extracts Arendt's specific definition of thoughtless conformity and applies it to modern, everyday social scripts.
We're just reporting what's in the text.
Exactly right. We are analyzing the mechanism she proposed. So let's set the scene of that trial. Adolf Eichmann was one of the major logistical organizers of the Holocaust.
He was the man who managed the mass deportation of Jews to ghettos and extermination camps.
He fled to Argentina after the war, was captured by the Mossad, and brought to Israel to stand trial.
Everyone expected a monster. They expected a bloodthirsty psychopath.
A demon in a glass booth.
But that is not what Arendt saw.
And what's fascinating and what deeply disturbed her was that Eichmann didn't seem like a monster at all.
He seemed like a mid-level bureaucrat.
Arendt completely flipped the conventional understanding of evil by coining the phrase, the banality of evil.
She observed that totalitarian systems do not actually need monsters to function. They don't require legions of sociopaths.
What do they need then? They need civil servants.
Right. They need conformity.
The massive grinding machine of totalitarianism doesn't demand sadistic cruelty from every person involved. It mostly demands that people blindly follow procedures.
Eichmann, in her observation, was a man who filled out forms. He signed transfer orders.
He organized train schedules to ensure they ran on time. He spoke almost entirely in bureaucratic cliches.
The terrifying crux of Arndt's argument is that he never actually thought about what he was doing.
The text highlights that exact word, thought.
He lacked the capacity to think from the perspective of somebody else.
He was just executing his job description. For Arendt, the most devastating, world-ending evil doesn't necessarily stem from rabid, foaming-at-the-mouth hatred.
It comes from the absence of thought.
The total failure to pause, reflect, and interrogate the system you are a part of.
Okay, I have to stop you there because I can hear the listener practically yelling at their device right now.
I know, it's a huge leap.
Comparing a guy down on one knee with a ring waiting for a yes to the logistical machinery of a totalitarian regime feels like a massive, almost offensive leap.
It is a massive leap, and that is exactly why it is so provocative.
How does the author possibly justify linking a pop song about a breakup to the banality of evil?
The author justifies it by asking us to look away from the scale of the event and look entirely at the mechanism of the behavior.
A mechanism.
Yes, the text states, for Arendt, thinking is not an intellectual luxury reserved for universities. It is an act of daily resistance.
Meaning it's not about what you are agreeing to, it's the fact that you were agreeing automatically.
Precisely. Every single time someone stops, refuses to act automatically, and says to themselves, wait, do I really agree with this procedure?
Do I actually want this outcome?
Yes. When they do that, they are engaging in politics in the most noble sense of the term. They are breaking the automatic pilot.
The text says freedom doesn't begin in grand constitution or sweeping declarations of independence.
Where does it begin?
It begins in the tiny, almost invisible moment when an individual refuses to sign a pre-filled form.
Even when everyone around them has already signed it, and everyone expects them to do the exact same thing.
Arendt died in 1975, working right up until the end, and I love the specific detail the author includes here.
Oh, about her typewriter.
Yeah. When she passed, a blank sheet of paper was found rolled into her typewriter with just 2 words typed at the top. The life of the mind.
She hadn't finished thinking.
As the author notes, she probably never would have, because the act of continuous, unfinished questioning is the very principle of her philosophy.
So if we distill Arendt down for the purpose of this deep dive, evil and oppression do not need villains.
They need people who do not think.
An automatic yes is not an act of love. It is an act of administration.
Freedom begins when someone dares to say no when the champagne has already been served.
Which brings us, through that thematic bridge, to the core of Taylor Swift's song Champagne Problems.
From her 9th album, Evermore.
Yes. This song represents the ultimate, universally recognized, pre-filled form in modern society.
Let's set the scene based on the text, and let's really look at the narrative pacing of the song. We have a highly specific situation.
A guy plans a marriage proposal.
And it is perfectly, seamlessly orchestrated. He booked the night train, he has his mother's ring in his pocket.
He has the speech prepared.
The audience of family or friends is gathered in the other room waiting to pop the Dom Perignon.
The entire setup is designed like a gravitational funnel leading to one specific, inevitable outcome.
She's supposed to say yes.
The protocol is flawless.
But she doesn't say yes.
She doesn't.
She drops her hand. She shatters the glass, metaphorically speaking. And to analyze why this is so explosive, the author introduces us to a fictional academic character, Professor Malik Merriwell.
Merriwell takes Arndt's framework and applies it like a scalpel to completely deconstruct this 3-minute song.
Professor Merriwell argues that what we are witnessing in this lyric is not a sad romantic mishap.
No, we are dealing with a micro-political rupture within a ceremonial dispositive.
I have to laugh at that phrasing every time. Ceremonial dispositive.
It is so perfectly, densely academic.
But what does it actually mean for you and me?
It means that at first glance, you just see a trivial, everyday situation. A proposal, a painful refusal, some crying, a long train ride home.
But if you apply Arndt's lens, the marriage proposal is not a romantic event. It is a protocol.
A protocol, like a computer executing lines of code.
If X happens, then Y must follow.
Exactly. It is a sequence of pre-validated, culturally enforced gestures designed to produce a predictable, safe outcome,
Merriwell breaks it down mathematically. The presentation of the ring triggers surprise,
which mandates an expression of emotion.
which necessitates an affirmation, yes.
What Arendt allows us to see is that the true danger in society isn't always overt, violent coercion.
The danger lies in the comforting seamlessness of the procedure.
Merriwell even talks about a hypothetical experiment he ran. He claims to have analyzed 10,000 simulated ceremonial environments.
Looking at 8,000 years of human matrimonial rites.
And his conclusion is wild. He finds that the higher the ritual density, the lower the probability of reflective interruption.
In plain English, the more elaborate the ceremony, the more flowers, the more expensive the champagne, the more people watching, the less thinking actually occurs.
You are physically and psychologically swept up in the ritual. You are carried away by the momentum of the props.
Think about the last time you sat in a corporate meeting. Someone puts up a massive, beautiful PowerPoint presentation with charts and projections.
Oh, totally.
Everyone else around the table is nodding along, looking serious. They ask for approval to move forward on a project timeline you secretly know is completely flawed.
But you don't say anything.
Right, because the momentum of the meeting is so strong, the ritual of the presentation is so dense that you just nod your head to.
That is exactly what Merriwell is talking about.
Yes. And Merriwell coins a brilliant term for this: the champagne threshold.
The idea is that once the champagne is poured and waiting on ice, the social pressure reaches a tipping point where independent thought becomes statistically negligible.
The subject is no longer acting as a free agent. She is merely executing the final line of code.
It is exactly like clicking I agree on a massive terms and conditions page for a new software update.
You scroll to the very bottom of the page in 2 seconds.
The champagne in this scenario is just the scrolling mechanism.
Society has scrolled to the bottom for you. The guy on one knee is just the glowing accept button.
You aren't actually supposed to stop and read the fine text of the rest of your life.
You are just supposed to sign on the dotted line so everyone can move on to the party.
The seamless procedure demands compliance. It demands a signature. And what Professor Merriwell finds so extraordinary in this song isn't just the refusal itself, but the temporal anomaly it introduces.
A temporal anomaly, like a glitch in the matrix.
Precisely. A delay, a hesitation. The song describes her being speechless.
That silence is a fracture in the automaticity of the script.
The text emphasizes that this hesitation is not disobedience in a moral sense. She isn't trying to be cruel.
It is disobedience at the level of cognition.
It is a sudden, terrifying refusal to let the sequence think in her place. As Merriwell concludes, one signs, she did not. That is the entire event.
So what happens when someone actually stops to read those terms and conditions, realizes they don't agree, and refuses to click accept?
Society
The
panics.
system freaks out. Let's unpack the fallout of the no. The text dives deep into the reaction of the crowd and the fiancé in the song.
In the Larry's of Champagne problems, after she refuses, the crowd of gathered friends and family whispers that the woman is crazy.
She would have made such a lovely bride. What a shame she's fucked in the head.
Why do they immediately resort to a psychological diagnosis?
To answer that, the author brings in another voice, Gaston Blunder.
And Gaston is the blunt, cynical instrument to Merriwell's hyper-academic scalpel.
Gaston says, let me translate this before Merriwell invents a whole new branch of archaeology.
Guy plans a proposal, everything is ready, the ring is there, the dom is there.
She is supposed to say yes. She doesn't.
Right.
That's it.
And suddenly everyone acts like something is fundamentally, medically wrong with her brain.
Gaston makes a very cynical but incredibly accurate observation about human nature. He says they don't call her crazy because she did something objectively malevolent or evil.
They call her crazy because she didn't follow the script.
She introduced chaos into their organized evening.
Gaston's exact words hit so hard. Here's the real problem. People don't care if you're happy. They care if you behave.
She didn't behave, so now she's crazy. Funny how that works.
And Gaston adds a fascinating meta layer to this regarding pop culture itself. He notes that if she had simply said yes and followed the script, this wouldn't even be a song.
It would just be a beautifully bound wedding album sitting on a coffee table that nobody ever opens.
As he puts it, happy people don't write songs, they book caterers.
Happy people don't write songs, they book caterers.
Yeah.
That might be the best line in the entire text.
It's so good.
It perfectly sets up the dinner conversation the author scripts next. This is a hypothetical dialogue between a character called the Snob and a character called the Swiftie.
This dialogue is the ideological battleground of the whole book.
The snob represents traditional high culture, the academy, the Bourdieu-style gatekeepers.
The snob argues that Champagne Problems is literally just a girl refusing a marriage proposal and turning it into an overly dramatic 8-verse sob story.
The snob looks across the table and asks, where's the political philosophy? Where's the intellectual weight?
And the Swiftie comes back swinging.
The Swiftie says we are right in the middle of it. The Swiftie argues that Arendt spent her entire life trying to show us that the true danger to human freedom doesn't just lie in big, spectacular, world-ending decisions made by dictators.
The danger lies in the millions of little yeses we say every single day without thinking.
The ring, the restaurant, the notified friends it is a pre-filled form.
Naturally, the snob pushes back hard. The snob says comparing a peaceful marriage proposal in a nice town to the banality of evil and totalitarianism is not just disproportionate, it is historically illiterate.
And this is where the Swiftie makes the most crucial distinction in the book. The Swiftie says it's not the content that's comparable, it's the mechanism.
Exactly. The Swiftie clarifies that Arendt isn't saying that marriage is a crime or that a guy with a ring is an oppressor.
Right.
She's saying that the mechanism of thoughtlessness is the same. Every time we stop thinking and just blindly follow a social procedure because it's easier, we surrender a tiny piece of our freedom.
The yes expected of the woman in the song isn't a genuine choice anymore. It has become a formality.
The crowd, the groom, the culture, everyone has already decided the outcome for her.
The Swiftie points out that when the woman says no, the fiancé is suffering. Absolutely. He is heartbroken.
But the crowd in the other room whispering she's crazy isn't suffering heartbreak.
They are suffering from disturbance.
And that is the exact difference Arendt highlights between personal pain and political discomfort. The crowd is disturbed because their rigid categories were broken.
Their worldview, which relied on the sequence completing itself safely, was fractured.
They are upset because now they don't know what to do with the catering.
The snob accuses the Swiftie of turning a simple, messy breakup into a grandiose act of resistance.
And the Swiftie just eviscerates the snob, saying, you're doing exactly what Arendt describes.
Yep.
You refuse to think about the gesture because it doesn't fit neatly into your pre-assigned categories.
Political philosophy goes in box A, pop song goes in box B, form filled out stamp it, next.
The Swiftie tells the snob they aren't actually a thinker, they're just a classifier.
It is a devastating critique of how we consume information and judge art. And to really hammer this home, the author presents us with a multiple choice quiz.
Oh, the quiz.
Yeah, it's titled, Who Wants to Win Nothing? Question, what is really happening in Champagne Problems?
Let's actually look at this quiz because it forces you to choose a lens. Option A is, a young woman panics and makes an emotional mistake.
Professor Merriwell returns to the text to debunk this. He says this interpretation is intellectually lazy.
It just presupposes an interior psychological failure. It buys into the romantic myth of authenticity that aren't constantly dismantled.
The issue isn't emotional instability, it's a procedural interruption. Calling it a mistake assumes the yes was the only correct answer.
Right. What about option B? A tragic love story where timing fails.
Merriwell argues that blaming timing is just a narrative alibi.
It masks how rigid the ritual sequence actually is. Nothing fails temporally. The clocks were working fine.
What fails is the subject's compliance to the script.
Okay, option C. A refusal of love disguised as confusion.
This keeps us trapped in a binary of love versus no love. It ignores the entire architectural framework of the situation.
The woman's refusal targets the form of the proposal, the public pressure, the assumption of compliance, not necessarily the feeling of love itself.
You can love someone and still refuse to sign the form.
Which leaves us with the author's true answer, option D.
The interruption of a social script by an act of thought.
Precisely. Merriwell concludes that in that split second of hesitation, the subject reclaims her cognitive sovereignty.
She suspends the automatic execution of the sequence. It is, by definition, a micro-political event.
Cognitive sovereignty, the absolute right to rule your own mind in a given moment, regardless of the pressure around you.
The text sums up this whole rupture beautifully. The champagne glass remains full on the table, untouched, magnificent, and perfectly useless.
Like all the forms we have the courage not to sign. The catering service doesn't understand. Freedom cannot be served by the glass.
To really cement how a philosopher and a pop star would view this exact moment of reclaiming cognitive sovereignty, the author does something breathtakingly creative.
They imagine Taylor Swift and Hannah Arendt sharing a ride home together after the proposal falls apart.
Yes, the 7.2-kilometer Uber ride. This is presented as an approximate hypothetical transcript of a late-night ride.
The scene is set so vividly. The city is quiet. The streetlights are flashing past. There are empty glasses left behind in the venue.
The driver keeps nervously checking the rearview mirror because the tension in the back seat is so thick.
It feels very cinematic. You can almost hear the hum of the tires.
Taylor is staring out the window, processing what just happened. She starts by saying, quietly, "They all knew what was supposed to happen."
And Arendt, sitting next to her, replies with her trademark sharpness, "Of course they did."
Taylor says it was already decided before she even opened her mouth. The ring, the speech, the family, it was a locked trajectory.
And Arendt points out, that is what makes it a form.
Taylor turns to her and asks, "A form?"
And Arendt defines it for her. A situation where the outcome is expected and thinking becomes entirely unnecessary.
Taylor tries to process this. She asks, "So saying yes, that would have been normal?"
Arndt's response is chillingly precise. It would have been administrative.
Administrative. Just pushing paper in the front office of romance, approving the requisition order for a marriage.
There is a long silence in the car after that. Then Taylor asks, and saying no.
"An anomaly," Arndt replies.
Taylor says, "They looked at me like I was insane, like I was broken."
And Arndt validates this entirely.
Yes.
Because you introduced uncertainty into a completely closed system.
Taylor protests that it was just a moment, just a few seconds of hesitation.
But for Ernst, there are no just moments. There are only moments where people think, and moments where they don't.
Taylor asks the ultimate question, looking for absolution. So what did I do?
You refuse to let the situation think for you.
That's it, Taylor asks. Just that.
That is always it, Ernst says.
The text notes that the driver lowers the radio volume. The tension is palpable. Taylor finally confesses, "Feels like I broke something."
And Art nods, "You did."
Taylor asks what she broke.
And Art delivers the thesis of the entire deep dive, continuity.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, earlier in the text, there is a letter imagined from Arendt to Taylor that reinforces this Uber conversation.
Arndt writes, "You think the problem is that you said no. It is not. The problem is that everyone else had already said yes on your behalf."
Not as a question, but as a procedure.
Exactly. Arndt writes, "You did not refuse a man. You interrupted a sequence, and sequences do not like to be interrupted. They call it madness. They always do."
She goes on to say, "You were expected to follow steps. You did not. This is not a romantic failure. It is a rare moment of thought. And thought, contrary to what they believe, is never silent. It disturbs. It delays. It refuses."
You didn't break a heart, you broke a form. And that, in every organized system, is far more disruptive.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? Let's take this out of the hypothetical Uber and into your life.
We all face these moments of realization.
We absolutely do.
Think about the times when you suddenly realize you are just executing a script. Maybe it's in your career, you've been on a partner track for 5 years, everyone expects you to take the promotion, but you suddenly realize you hate the work.
Or maybe it's a societal expectation to buy a house in the suburbs when you'd rather rent in the city.
Everyone expects you to agree with the consensus at the meeting, to sign the mortgage, to say the yes.
And there is a terrifying, earth-shattering power in simply stopping to think, in introducing a delay.
In reclaiming your cognitive sovereignty, even if the crowd calls you crazy.
And this act of breaking forms isn't just about romance or personal milestones or corporate meetings.
The author of our source text zooms out dramatically in the afterword to apply this exact mechanism to the very fabric of how we consume information and construct thought in the modern world.
They have a very specific, very urgent warning about the future of human thought, and it involves the technology that surrounds us every second of every day.
The afterword is titled Antidote to Algorithmic Inbreeding.
And the author starts with a confession of sorts. They acknowledge that writing this book, this bizarre synthesis of Arendt and Swift, would have been materially impossible to research and assemble so quickly without the use of large language models, or AI.
But they don't praise the AI. They call these models stochastic parrots of infinity that read everything and understand absolutely nothing.
That phrase is vital. Stochastic parrots. Let's explain how these large language models actually work, because it's key to the author's warning.
An AI doesn't think about the meaning of a sentence. It uses stochastic probability, meaning it calculates the statistical likelihood of the next word.
If it sees the words the, cat, sat, on the, it calculates that the next word is almost certainly mat.
It isn't being creative. It is predicting the most average, mathematically likely human response based on millions of texts it has scraped.
It is a massive, incredibly fast autocomplete.
So it's essentially an engine of conformity.
Precisely. And the author isn't rejecting AI outright, but they are defining a necessary new role for the human being in this landscape, the data sovereign.
The text explains this through a really fascinating paradox about the history of infinite generation. It points out that back in the late 1980s, when digital image processing first emerged, the big promise was zero generation loss.
Right. If you take a physical piece of paper and make a photocopy, and then photocopy the photocopy and do that 100 times, the image degrades. It gets blurry and unreadable.
Digital technology promised that a copy remained pristine forever. The fidelity was mathematically infinite.
But today, the author warns, the danger is no longer the degradation of the visual signal. We aren't worried about blurry images.
The danger is the degradation of meaning. As the text says, the more we generate, the less we create.
This leads to a terrifying concept the author calls the trap of autophagy.
Autophagy literally translates to self-eating.
Because AI is generating so much text on the internet now, future AI models are increasingly training on AI-generated text. It is feeding on its own outputs.
It creates these recursive, self-eating loops where human thought becomes smoother, safer, and entirely average with each iteration.
It is a system devouring itself. By predicting the average next word endlessly, the machine mathematically flattens all the weirdness out of human thought.
It doesn't produce intelligence, it produces total conformity. The text quips, "No doubt certain mandarins of obscure seminars will delight in this sufficiently opaque concept."
But the warning is crystal clear. We are rapidly entering an era of algorithmic inbreeding.
So how do we break the loop? How do we stop the autophagy? The author says that this very book series, the Philo Swift Project, is designed as a deliberate disruption.
By taking Taylor Swift's red scarf from All Too Well and slamming it into Heidegger's ontology of being.
Or putting a dark, echoing stairwell next to Thomas Aquinas' Summa Theologica.
Or placing the ruthless political maneuvering of Machiavelli in a literal getaway car.
The text says this injects necessary friction into the smooth circuit of the machine.
The author makes a profound point here, and it connects all the way back to Arendt. AI can organize, it cannot dare.
Making a conceptual leap, pairing wildly disparate ideas together that have no statistical probability of being linked, is an act of intellectual vandalism.
And that vandalism is an inherently, exclusively human act. AI will never predict Taylor Swift and Hannah Arendt because, statistically, they don't belong in the same sentence.
The author coins a term for this necessary vandalism: capacitivism. They say we shouldn't reject the digital photocopy, we should overload it.
We need to introduce sparks and short circuits that the system cannot anticipate. There is no training data in the world for pairing Ludwig Wittgenstein's philosophy of language with a slammed door,
Right.
or French philosopher Gilles Deleuze wearing lipstick.
We have to force the machine onto side roads it wasn't programmed to take.
This is what it means to be the master of source data, the data sovereign. The text declares that the citizen of tomorrow will not be the one who passively consumes the endless flow of perfectly average data.
The citizen of tomorrow will be the one who bends it. Sovereignty isn't about owning information anymore. It is about having the courage to disturb its logic.
I marvel at this. The author says the cat has taken the color of the mouse. It has entered the machine.
They used the AI to build the book, but they forced the AI to build something irrational.
And the result is an object that the algorithm alone would never, ever have dared to assemble. It required the friction of a human.
Or, as they joke, maybe a human cat.
It is a brilliant way to justify the entire project from start to finish. The book itself is an Easter egg hunt, much like Swift's own lyrics.
The text actually references a Washington Post quote from Swift to prove this. When I was 15 and putting together my first album, I decided to encode the lyrics with hidden messages.
The author asks whether these deep philosophical parallels in the songs are intentional or not, and then shrugs and says it is entirely up to us. Or perhaps we're simply reading all too well.
Another Easter egg. It proves that simplifying philosophy isn't a betrayal of it. It's a democratic translation. It is inviting everyone into the VIP club, bypassing the bouncer entirely.
So if we look back at the massive journey we've taken through this source material,
We started with Pierre Bourdieu showing us that the smirk we get when pairing pop culture and philosophy is just society trying to sort us into high and low classes. It's about credentials at the country club versus playlists on the bus.
then we explored Hannah Arendt's fierce, controversial defense of active thinking. Her observation at the Eichmann trial that the greatest evils are not perpetuated by monsters, but by conformity.
By people functioning merely as administrators of a system, filling out forms rather than thinking as individuals.
Which brought us to the marriage proposal in Champagne Problems. It isn't a romance. It is a ceremonial dispositive.
A pre-filled form where the champagne lubricates the norm, the ritual density prevents thought, and the catering service expects you to sign.
We saw how refusing that form, delaying the sequence, reclaims your cognitive sovereignty.
How breaking the continuity causes the crowd to whisper crazy because you have disturbed their political comfort and fractured their worldview.
And finally, we looked at the future. How this exact same mechanism of thoughtless conformity threatens us today with AI and algorithmic inbreeding.
How we must become intellectual vandals, overloading the system with human friction and weirdness to avoid a world of perfectly smooth, average, thoughtless output.
The ultimate lesson here is that true freedom cannot be served by the glass. It requires the courage to interrupt the sequence.
It is a powerful, sweeping synthesis of pop culture, historical philosophy, and future technological anxiety. It asks us to be brave enough to be anomalous.
It really does.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final, lingering question to explore on your own.
Think about the routines and the automated yeses in your own life right now.
What is your personal champagne threshold? The next time you are handed a pre-filled form, whether it is a societal expectation, a career milestone you don't actually want, or a predictive algorithm telling you exactly what to think or type next, will you just sign it?
Or will you risk looking a little crazy to the crowd
Yeah.
and reclaim your cognitive sovereignty by daring to pause, step back, and actually think?